Howdy, howdy. Dylan with Huntsville Guns. Today we are looking at a customer project. This is a gun that came in from a referral customer. I did a kind of brief overview of what it is in a video that came out a day or two ago, covering just kind of a daily shop update. But what I want to do is a little more in detail, in-depth look at this particular gun and what all is involved in the conservation. I want to cover kind of the brief overview of what it is and where it comes from and when it was made. And then we will do a little bit of discussion about the disassembly and the things that I'm looking at in a conservation for a gun like this. And then we will probably do an overhead view of the internal workings. I don't know that I'll disassemble and reassemble on video, but kind of give you an inside look at what's inside one of these shotguns. And then cover some of the conservation steps that I'm going to take. This has a few small issues with it, nothing crazy. This is one of those kind of guns that you could pick up relatively affordably and know that the little things that need to be fixed are very easy to accomplish at a DIY level with some basic understanding of how things come apart and go together, but also conservation versus restoration. So we're looking at a Francotte Belgian made side-by-side. This particular gun is a 16 gauge. It's a field grade gun, and by that I mean it's not a super ornate, fancy walnut, hand engraving, gold inlay kind of gun. It's a color case hardened receiver, some blue barrels, a decent piece of walnut. This was made to hunt with. This is a utility gun. And is not a super valuable firearm, but there is some history there and some cool features, and so we'll cover those. Again, color case hardened receiver. You can see that there is back here a little bit of surface rust starting to show up, but you can still barely see some of the coloring on the receiver and some of the basics of the engraving. This is all hand engraved. You can see here on the bottom of the trigger guard. Nothing super elegant or ornate. And looking, let me grab a dental pick at the screws. You can see on the side of the screw heads here, somebody has definitely had this gun apart before, or at least attempted to, because the screw heads have a little bit of waller in them. So just a pretty straight grain piece of walnut. This is a European stock, so it doesn't have a palm swell. It's just a straight bottom stock. The butt pad that is on the gun is not designed for this gun. This is an aftermarket replacement. I originally said that this gun is probably in 85% condition. I'm going to say it's maybe a little bit less than that. There's a little more surface rust than I originally anticipated, and a little bit more original finish is missing. This does have a sling swivel soldered on a base here at the bottom of the barrels. You can see the checkering pattern is very basic, not a super sharp triangle design or diamond design, but a very basic European style checkering. The bore on this gun, both barrels are in immaculate condition. There's no dark spots, no black rings, no abrasion that I can see. This actually is a very good candidate for continued use. I would say that this would be a great quail gun or a bird hunting gun for the right person. Just needs a little conservation overall. The barrels have a couple of spots. I'm going to play the light here to see if I can show you. A little bit of frosted surface rust, nothing that's pitted. I can barely feel it with a gloved hand. Those should clean up pretty well. The barrels are straight, there's no dents in them. The original front bead is on the gun. This gun did not come with a mid bead. But overall, a nice shotgun that deserves to be cleaned up and put back together. So what I am normally going to start with on a gun like this is a bottle of penetrating oil. Who knows the last time this thing came apart? And all of the screws we are going to assume are very firmly in their home and are not going to want to be removed. So I like to start with a little lightweight penetrating oil and just give all of the screw heads a couple of drops of oil to allow them to go ahead and start loosening up. knowing that we are going to have to remove them, and because all of the screws are engraved in this gun, we don't want to have to fight to get them out and tear the screws up. This is a box lock action, and so I'll pull the barrels off so I not have to wield as long of a gun to show you. But a box lock simply means that the locking mechanism is inside of the receiver. There are no exposed hammers. The lock mechanism is all contained inside the receiver. You can see here the takedown lever on the top of the gun. When I focus, there we go. When I move the takedown lever, you can see the locking lug here, how it operates. So as I press to the side, this locking lug pushes out of the way and allows the barrels to unlock. On the back of the barrels here, you can see where that locking lug engages. You want to check these and make sure that the hole is not all wallered out and beat up. As these guns age and with use, that lock loosens over time, and every time you go to close it, that lug will start to impact at a different place on the lug on the barrels. You just want to make sure that you're not damaging anything or that it's not eating itself. So, like I said, I'm going to put a couple of drops of oil on all of the screws here, and then I'm going to use a stainless dental pick for those of you who wince every time I use a stainless dental pick. I'm going to clean out all of the screw slots. So this gun has been sitting in a closet or been put away for several years, and there is a good buildup of black gloves and black junk, but just crap or debris in all of the screw slots. And so I am going to take the opportunity now before I get started to oil a couple of spots and clean out all the screw slots so it will ease disassembly a little bit later. Let me go ahead and get these cleaned out off camera, and then I will jump over to, I'll tell you what, let me get some of this blown apart, disassembled, and then we will look at individual components from a top-down view so you can see kind of a little more in detailed look of what the inside of one of these looks like. Let me jump over to the bench after I get this torn apart. Okay, so here I am taking the stocks off of the gun. Just a quick look, got the recoil pad off. There's definitely an extra hole there from where the original pad was, and then whoever installed this aftermarket pad that doesn't fit the gun. But you can see me struggle here with a few of the screw heads. The slots in these are incredibly thin, and so I went ahead and ground a bit for this particular gun, but just get it all torn apart, and I think I actually finish off camera. All right, let's take a closer look at what we've got. Got the shotgun blown apart to its major sub-assemblies, we'll call it. And so we have the action and all of its internal components, the trigger mechanism, the trigger guard, and then the bottom plate. I don't have the screws here in front of me, but I want to cover kind of some terminology and then take a look at what the inside of one of these looks like. So the action itself has a couple of screws that you can see here, and then there's the main cross bolt here. And these screws hold in all of the internal geometries. So if we look, removing the bottom plate from the gun, focus is gonna drive me crazy. But if we remove the bottom plate from the gun, we can see a couple of the main components of the receiver. So here we have the two op rods. This is what the bottom of the trigger presses up on. And so if this is like this, when you pull the trigger back, this little horn on the trigger here presses up on these, and that's what fires the gun, like so. And then, so this is the kind of the op rod, and then here's your hammer with the sear surface, and this is the cocking mechanism up front. So from the front of the receiver here, as the, I'm gonna move this one, as the shotgun is opened, this lever is pressed down, and that's what cocks the hammer on these guns. You can manually cock this from the bottom. You just need a pretty strong, something to push down on the hammer, or up technically, since we're upside down. A couple of screws here to retain this bottom plate. And then if we look here, there's the flat spring. That's what provides spring resistance for the takedown lever and locking lug. that big flat spring here in the top of the receiver. And then we have the safety selector. You can see that this has a gold-filled S for safe, and then forward is on fire, like most shotguns. If we look at the trigger mechanism, when the gun is opened, there is a lug. If you'll look here, this lug moves rearward when unlocking the firearm, and that lug presses on this rod and presses this linkage rearward, and this linkage puts the firearm back on safe. So if it's on fire, this linkage, when the gun is opened, presses rearward and puts the gun back on safe. There's a flat spring here that gives that resistance. You can see the pivot point here for the linkage, as well as your pivot point here for both of your triggers. Pivot around this. Let me push this back forward. Both of your triggers pivot around that pin there. All these parts are numbered. If you look here on the side, you can see the number 22. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. See the number 22. And then all of the internal components for this firearm appear to be marked 22 to include the bottom plate. You can see here all of this dried grease that's on this gun. The gun was cleaned at some point, and somebody put some grease in it. And you can see the impressions that the screw heads left on the bottom of the plate. But all this grease has since dried out, and it's gathered a little bit of rust in the process. So I'll clean all of that out. I would say that these triggers were probably originally plated. If you look here at the top of the trigger, there's a bit of a kind of a shiny surface left, which leads me to think that these were probably nickel plated at some point or gold plated, and most of that plating is gone. You can see that the internal finishes of the metal surfaces is a bit rough. You can hear that dental pick drag over the wind noise anyways. A little bit of the internal surfaces are kind of rough, indicating that this wasn't finished exceedingly high. Doesn't mean it's a bad shotgun, it just means that it wasn't a top tier gun, and so they built these parts to work, not necessarily to look pretty. Most people never see the inside of one of these guns anyways. Like I said, there is a bunch of dried grease in this gun. Not all oils and grease are created equal. It's pretty regularly that I see a gun that comes in that had oil in it at one point, and that oil has dried up and turned to like a varnish type substance like this has. And so I will soak this. The gun doesn't need to be disassembled any further than it is right now. There's nothing damaged or wrong. There's a pretty high risk of damaging these screw heads by trying to disassemble this gun, and so I will soak this in a mild solvent to break down all of this dried up grease, and if that doesn't do it, then I will go into the ultrasonic tank with some heated solvent and let that cook all of it out of there. But like I said, numbered internals, pretty beautiful gun. You can see remnants of the color case hardening on it. Really gorgeous finish. I like the flared edge on the side of the receiver face here, where the barrels lock in. You can see the firing pin protruding here from the cylinder or the chamber that I fired, and then the other one, the hole is slightly oblonged at the bottom end. There's a little bit of metal peened over that I can just barely catch with the pick, but nothing that's insane that needs to be addressed right now. Again, you can see the locking lug move out of the way when I activate the lever. Serial number here on the table, proof marks that match the marks on the barrel. This gun is serial number matching. All of the components match. Pretty decent gun. You can see the engraving here on the bottom. Very basic, not too ornate. But the threaded portion that screws into the bottom of the gun, this is obviously brazed on. Not done very well, and some of the threads are a bit damaged, but it unscrewed very easily. You can see the surface rust. The metal finish is gone on this part. All that remains is a little bit of bluing here, and then a little on the inside, but everything else, the bluing is missing. And so this one will get cleaned up, and I will convert the rust and then card it very lightly. I don't want to remove any of that remaining finish. But like I said, this isn't a points concourse restoration. This is just a conservation to keep a functioning gun in service for a couple of more years. Just clean up all the stuff, remove all the debris and the grease and dried on oils, and put it back together with some fresh oil. Get it back into service. You can see here on the inside of the handguard, the forend, the original case hardening that was on this gun. It was very beautiful. Lots of that deep purples and some blues and a little bit of that rusty brown color. Really gorgeous. But unfortunately, the majority of it is gone at this point. See the basic engraving here on it. The handguard is chipped on this side here. The barrel inlet was done very, very close to the barrels. You can see what it should look like. It has a bit of a flare right here, and that flare is broken off on this side. Again, for a utility gun, something that's going to continue to be hunted with. Nothing crazy. So I will take a very soft bristled toothbrush and clean all of the checkering out on the stocks, and apply a little Johnson's Paste Wax just to preserve them, keep them from drying out. And then probably do a little cleanup here on the forend button. It's got a little bit of grit to it, so I may disassemble this a little bit further, clean it out, and oil it up. We'll see. Let me jump back over to the main bench. I'm not going to do another time lapse for this. I'll just get it cleaned up and scrubbed up, do a little bit of rust conversion, and oil it up and put it back together. And then maybe we will do a closer look at the wood, or just take it out back and test fire it. I do have some 16 gauge, really light 2 3/4 loads, and so we may take it out back and shoot it. All right, another quick time lapse. Here I am putting the firearm back together. You see me jump to the back of the screen here using a propane torch. I actually have a can of oil and the propane torch, just oil blackening some of the screws so they look better as the gun goes back together. All right, bring it in for kind of a last minute update on this one. I have got it clean and put back together. I did some time lapse. I don't want to bore y'all with the same stuff all the time, but I ended up having to take this one down all the way. Excuse me. It is hot in Texas today. Like I said, boiled it in the ultrasonic a couple of times and couldn't get all of that dried out grease out of the inside of it. So went ahead and blew it all the way down to its components and got all of the internal stuff cleaned. And then I took a 400 and 600 grit stone to some of the surfaces that were kind of rolled over. There's no damage really in it, but just some use. So cleaned all of that up and then have it put back together. This thing is beautiful. It's an absolutely gorgeous firearm. But you can see, if I can get the color right, I've got all the doors open, so you're getting sunlight and artificial light, but all of the screw heads match. The case hardening is beautiful. There's a couple of dark spots where the case is gone now, but absolutely gorgeous gun. Went ahead and put a little paste wax on the stock. I still need to order a replacement butt pad. This one has a little bit of a curve to the back end of the stock, so I'm gonna have to look and see what's available. But like I said, had to oil blacken or oil blue a couple of the screw heads, and while I had it apart, I went ahead and cleaned up the triggers and did a little bit of bluing on them as well as the selector lever. It was pretty crusty. Not anything that's going to damage the value of the gun, but just to clean it up and keep it from getting worse. Just conservation stuff. But barrel's cleaned up pretty good. They're going to take another couple, 2-3 coats of oil just to keep them from getting any worse. But I'll do that over the next couple of days while I wait on the butt pad to come in for it. So these old side-by-side and over and under guns, 100 years old, you need to be cognizant of the ability to fire modern shells. This one happens to be capable of doing so, but there are lots of these out there and they're pretty affordable as far as entry level. It's a great gun to learn gunsmithing on because there are so many intricate parts. The screw heads on these are very, very thin, and so I actually had to grind a bit to fit and got it apart. So there's some gunsmithing 101 stuff involved in taking one of these apart and putting them back together. But I'll throw this one in the safe and wait for the butt pad to come in, and then we'll do a wrap-up video when it's finished, and maybe do some test firing. I'm going to talk to the customer. It's a beautiful gun. It deserves to be put back into service and shot, but I'm going to turn the fan back on and get back to work. I've got a couple of other guns that I need to get finished. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed it. All right, so finishing up the Belgian side-by-side. Just to recap, gun came in, customer purchased it from a customer of his. Didn't know a lot about it, but also it needed just some basic conservation and a few small things. So I have cleaned the gun up. I ended up boiling the barrels. There was just a little bit of surface rust, kind of a frosting of surface rust in a couple of spots. So I got them boiled, carded, and then oiled. Some of the smaller metal parts, primarily the two triggers, were pretty rusty. Again, surface rust, but all of their finish was gone. So I have gone ahead and like oil blackened them, if you will. And then cleaned up the bottom of the trigger guard. It had a little bit of rust, and so I have done some browning. I wanted it to match the rest of the gun. I didn't want to have a brand new blued part against a patinaed firearm, and so I used a little slow rust and I browned the part. It's got kind of that plum brown color that fits the rest of the firearm. I installed the sling swivel on the back. I don't have one that necessarily fits the gun, so this is just an off-the-shelf, kind of an Uncle Mike's style of swivel. And then I have ground to fit the Pachmayr Old English recoil pad. This is the 0.60 thickness. I wanted to keep the length of pull where it should be, and so for me it's about a 13 3/4 inch length of pull, which should work perfectly for the customer. These pads are super easy to install, but you need a few things, a little bit of know-how. So a grinding fixture. I don't remember who sells this one. Midway, Brownells, one of them carries these, and you can adjust the angle so that the toe of the stock and recoil pad match. I hate seeing recoil pads that are square when the toe is not square. So a grinding fixture, a square, an adjustable square. You want your recoil pad. Again, this is the Pachmayr Decelerator 752B. This is the Old English style. A little bit of Johnson's paste wax for the screws, and a disc sander. I use an 80 grit disc to do most of the roughing in. You want to make sure that your disc doesn't load up with rubber and then starts to burn the side of the pad. You want to make sure that the sanding disc stays fairly clean in the process. And then I usually finish about a 120 or a 180 on the belt, and then polish out the black plastic spacer to make it look nice. Overall, not a whole lot. We'll talk about the cost breakdown briefly. So the customer brought the gun to me, didn't need to do an inspect and diagnose. I did measure the chamber and the constriction for the choke on the barrel, but I'm not going to bill him for that. Complete disassembly, reassembly, the conservation, the recoil pad, the sling swivel, and just a cleanup of the parts. Nothing, said I didn't refinish anything too new, but rather boil and card the barrels, and then add a little slow rust browning to the bottom of the trigger guard, and then I oil blackened some of the screw heads just to give them that matching finish to the gun. I wanted to keep the originality how it is. I don't want to make this video super long, but recoil pad, I think they're $45 or $50 plus $70 for the install. Sling swivel, I don't even know what I'm going to bill the customer. Like I said, I keep these on hand. I have a pile of them. Just the Uncle Mike's QD swivels. They come with a lot of bits and pieces to fit a lot of different guns. This one already had the hole there, so I didn't even have to do that. I just had to install it, so $4 or $5 for the swivel, whatever it cost. And then the conservation work. The customer has brought me several firearms, and so I'm going to factor that into my pricing overall. But I would say he's $250 out the door on this, ballpark, give or take a couple of bucks. All labor other than the recoil pad and the swivel, and so profitable for the shop. A good way to keep yourself busy is conservation work like this. And then at the end of the day, he has a beautiful, ready to use firearm. This one deserves to be put back into work. You can see the case hardening. Colors are still present. They're not super dark like they would have been originally, but there's still a lot of color to them. So I'm going to take this one out back and put a round or two through it just to make sure everything's perfectly functional, put back together correctly, which I'm positive that it is. Snake the barrels and send it out the door. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed this one.